everyone, my name is Stuti Banga and this is my showcase video under the FAIR project by 81 Foundation in partnership with UNESCO. For the purpose of this video, I will be speaking about something that is extremely dear to my heart, and that is meaningful collaboration. So to start this video off, I will request all of you to picture yourself in a few different scenarios. First, let's say you just finished 10th grade and your parents make a decision on your behalf about which stream you should be pursuing without giving any consideration to your passions. Or let's say you're a university student and your institution decides to change the attendance policy midway through the semester without having any discussion with the students. Or let's say you're at work and you already have a pile of tasks to finish, but your boss orders you to take up additional tasks without having any discussion with you. How do these scenarios make you feel? Having all of these decisions being made on your behalf for supposedly your benefit without you having any involvement in them or you having any say in them. It feels frustrating, right? So just hold on to this feeling of frustration because for the entirety of this video, we will be speaking about meaningfully involving the communities in the CSR work that is being done for them. And I will also be talking about the two models that I have devised based on my experience about how we can put this collaboration into action on field. Let's look at the CSR space, right? Or just the development landscape in general. The idea behind any project is to ensure that its benefits can be reaped in the long term, right? As is with CSR work, you want to ensure that the project that you've put into place, the beneficiaries are able to get benefits out of that project in the long term. However, today in CSR, we are noticing a trend wherein, despite the initial success of a project, once the implementing agency exits and once the funding that is provided by the donor expires, the community does not really take up the project further and the project just falls through. Now, what is it that we can do? And what are the actionable steps that we can take to ensure the success of our CSR projects in the long term? The answer to this actually lies in community ownership. So, if we look at meaningfully involving the communities, meaningfully collaborating with them, and this is not just on a surface level for branding purposes, but actually delving deep into understanding what the community wants and what their idea of development is from this project, we can actually work on sustaining the project in the long term. So think of that feeling of frustration we spoke about, right? How must a community feel if a CSR project that is being implemented for them, but they have no meaningful say or contribution in the project? In my experience, I have actually seen that no meaningful contribution results in the community feeling extremely detached from the project. And this is exactly where we can all come together with the community, collaborate with them to bring about a meaningful change. And now I will be speaking about the two models that I have devised based on my experience to put this collaboration into action. And these are intangible and tangible community ownership. The models of tangible and intangible community ownership actually ensure that our CSR projects extend beyond their funding periods and that the community feels as if they are a stakeholder in the development projects that are being done for them. So to start this off, I will first speak about intangible community ownership. And under this, the beneficiary population actually contributes in terms of their local knowledge, their sensibilities, and their lived experiences to sort of streamline the direction of the intervention in a way that ensures its sustenance and ethicality. So let's look at an example, right? Um, a lot of CSR projects today aim to create enterprises for their beneficiaries. So these enterprises allow the beneficiaries to directly sell their produce and get profit, completely eliminating the middlemen. And this produce can be agricultural or non agricultural. Now, a way of incorporating intangible community ownership would be to actually sit down with the community and work out the different branding elements of this enterprise. So, let's say the logo, the design of the packaging, the color of the packaging, the material of the packaging. All of this is something where we can leverage the local knowledge and experiences of the community. To give you a real life example of how we can put this into action, I was working on a project wherein we were designing a packaging for a sanitary pad that would be produced by rural women. And initially, our team put into place a certain packaging that had an emblem on it. However, when we took this packaging to the beneficiaries, they did not like it because they associated this emblem with festivities and prayer and worship. And that was not something they wanted on a sanitary pad. After this, we decided to scrap this packaging entirely. We sat with the community and worked out an entirely new packaging, which was based on their local experience and their sensibilities. We also chose a different color, which was easier to print in rural areas and rural shops. And today, 4 years after this entire incident, this packaging is still being used by our beneficiaries. This is just one way. Another way of incorporating intangible community ownership would be utilizing the local knowledge and sensibilities of our population to ensure that everybody is on the same page. Now, oftentimes what happens in CSR projects, there is a mismatch of expectations. We are actually collectively discussing the aim of the project, but we rarely discuss the exact interventions that would lead to that aim. And this is where we can leverage the community, their lived experiences, and their knowledge to actually work out a theory of change or to finalize the exact interventions that would help us in achieving this goal. So, speaking to the community will make us realize whether the goals, the interventions that we have in place, are they actually achievable or not? Because a lot of the times we find out after speaking to the community that we can actually take a completely different course of action. So, these are two examples that we can use to leverage intangible community ownership. And what intangible community ownership really does is that it ensures that our projects are more well grounded, they are designed more effectively, keeping into consideration the experiences and the knowledge of the community that has to carry it forward. So, this is one model. Now, looking at the next model, which is tangible community ownership. Under this, the beneficiaries, they contribute directly towards the capital or the operational expenditure in a project, and this increases their involvement and their responsibility. So this is fairly simple to understand. It could include the community providing any one resource, right? It could be land, electricity, monetary support for machinery or some part of the equipment, or any tangible resource that increases their stake and voice in the project. And by tangible here, I mean it in the very literal sense. Again, a real life example of this would be a project that I was working on, wherein we had to upgrade the machinery to improve the outcomes of the project that we were undertaking. And during our implementation plan, we worked out a system wherein 50% of the cost of upgrading this machinery would come from the implementing agency and the donors, and the remaining 50% would come from the beneficiaries. And after we put this plan of action, we found out from our beneficiaries that they felt that contributing money into the project had actually increased their sense of belonging and their sense of motivation to run the project. So now they were involved in the decision making a lot more. They were at the forefront of it actually. They helped us decide what vendors we should go ahead with, what should be the system, what should be the timelines. They were really running the project and running the decision making. With tangible community ownership, it is not necessary that the community always contributes 50%. It could be 20%, 10%, 5%, 2%. The idea actually here is to ensure that the community feels a sense of ownership towards the project and has an increased voice and stake in the project. Now, moving on to the concluding remarks. Ideally, a CSR project should involve both tangible and intangible community ownership. However, there could be cases wherein we are working with extremely vulnerable populations that may not be able to contribute monetarily or through the means of tangible community ownership. Now, in these cases, the knowledge of the community, their lived experiences, and essentially the model of intangible community ownership should be utilized and integrated within the implementation strategy of the project. The incorporation of these models that I just spoke of right now, they actually ensure a greater possibility for the long term sustenance of a project. It ensures the community feels ownership over the project and they have a say in the development work that is being done. And I feel that the applicability of these models should not just be limited to CSR. Rather, it can be extended to all kinds of development work since these models are based on enhancing the power of collaboration. They really place the community or the beneficiaries along with their capacity to guide an intervention and their experiences at the very core of the project. So, a key takeaway of this video, and I will end with this, is that collaborating with a community is integral to ensuring the long term success of a CSR project. And this can be done both through tangible and intangible community ownership. The adoption of these models actually challenges the conventional notion that urban centric corporations or Western centric corporations possess an all encompassing knowledge to design sustainable projects for diverse communities. These models challenge the status quo by promoting inclusivity, and they also empower the communities or the beneficiaries as integral stakeholders in the entire development process. Through these models, we can ensure that development is not being done onto the community, but rather being done with the community.